Today, we have a lot to get to, including Jason Scheer, WildcatAuthority.com, covers Arizona, covers the Pac-12, and is a guy we've gone to quite a bit the last year and a half, but not as much of late. And Jason joins us on 365 Sports. Jason, thanks for your time. So from your perspective, you put up a tweet, I think it might have been a day or two ago, about the Brett Yormark podcast with John Wilner, and you said Yormark talking directly to Dave Hickey, I hope I got that right, in the podcast with John Wilner, the hotline, monetizing basketball. Was that like a laser beam right between the eyes for Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it felt like because, you know, when you look at the Pac-12, Arizona football is clearly not as good as Arizona basketball. And in this town, Arizona basketball is number 1, 2, and 3. And that's one of the big reasons why Arizona fans, are looking towards the Big 12. And so when Yormark goes and says that, and you look around at the conference and the teams that are left after USC and UCLA are gone, it just totally felt like that comment was, hey, Arizona, I think basketball is important, and I'm going to get you money off basketball. And so that one was definitely heard loudly here.
Jason, where between the fans and the university, and we've asked you this before, but as things have continued to drag out with the television deal and there is some confusion about what the overall goals of every institution are, where is the university in relation to what a large segment of the fans want is to look at another league?
I think that the university itself is willing to let things play out. And there's people within the administration that have said from day one that the money isn't going to be there. And eventually it's going to be time to move if it's not there, but they're willing to kind of wait and give the commish a chance to raise it. And nothing's changed from that perspective. I mean, as of today, the money is not there. And eventually we're going to get to a point, and I've heard that there's kind of a deadline of mid-April after the NCAA tournament of saying, look, if we don't have a deal by then, it's time for us to really start seriously looking around because you're within a year of the deal ending with the Pac-12, and you got to do what's best for your school. And so, I don't want to say that Arizona or other schools are anxious to leave, but it's become the point where they're like, okay, they're willing to let the process play out. It's just not headed in a direction that I think anyone is confident in right now.
Jason, how excited do you think Arizona fans would be about San Diego State and SMU as new conference mates?
It's not being met with very much excitement. I think there's a lot more understanding with San Diego State. California, the research money and all that. Arizona has played San Diego State plenty in both sports, West Coast. It makes sense. When SMU was announced as the second team being looked at or leaked as the second team being looked at, I don't even think it's just Arizona fans. I think most casual observers were basically saying why. It's not – it's in Dallas, it's not a part of the major Dallas market. It's in Dallas, but it's not like it's a big thing in Dallas. The football isn't very good. The basketball is awful as of late, and it doesn't. You're replacing USC and UCLA with San Diego State and SMU, and there's such a gap between those two, and it just San Diego State, I think people can kind of convince themselves it's okay. I think SMU is going to have a really tough time, and one of the reasons we're hearing SMU, I think, is because they're willing to basically come into the conference for very, very little money. And so maybe from an admin, from a commission standpoint, it makes sense. But from a fan perspective, I mean, there's just no attraction there.
Jason, if Arizona was to pick up the phone, or if somebody else in the Pac-12 was to pick up the phone and call Arizona and say something to the effect, I'm tired of this, who would it be that they would be attached to, in your opinion?
To me, I think that a lot of these schools, maybe even every school in the conference, is waiting for Oregon and Washington to figure out what they're doing. Whether, I've heard rumors as of late that they're interested again in going to the Big Ten and willing to do so at a much smaller share just to kind of get in there. The ACC rumors have picked up as of late. But I think if you're in Arizona, if Oregon and Washington aren't signing on to the Pac-12, once they leave, the conference as we know it is dead. I think that if an Oregon or Washington called Arizona and said, you know what, we're leaving, Arizona would say, sign us up, we're going where you're going, and if not, we're still leaving, because those are the two schools that I think everyone's kind of looking to right now.
Jason Scheer, 247 Sports Wildcat Authority, with us on the Arizona perspective and what's happening right now in the Pac-12.
But, Jason, isn't there at least some apprehension from the standpoint that where are Oregon and Washington going to go? I mean, with Kevin Warren out of the picture now, it appears like that expansion of the Big Ten may have slowed down to a bit of a trickle. I understand the Big 12 is the option, so would I guess the assumption be that they maybe would look at the Big 12, or you see what I'm saying there, or they would just stay in Pac? I mean, where would that exodus come from in your mind if it's not going to be the Big 10?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Does the ACC make a play? Do we hear the Notre Dame movement again? I'm very confident in saying that Yormark is trying to get Oregon and Washington in the Big 12. I think that is his top dog. That's what he wants. That is what would make the biggest splash. Is it going to be easy to do? I don't know. Again, it comes down to the money. If you're paying Oregon and Washington $25 million, they're not staying in the Pac-12. I don't know where they're going, but they're not staying in the Pac-12. For all intents and purposes, they could go independent and make that money. It doesn't make sense. Maybe, and even if they try to make more with, unequal revenue sharing, other schools wouldn't go for it. It's kind of just, I completely get your question. And to be honest, I don't have a clear answer. I know the Big 12, is trying to get Oregon and Washington more involved. I know the ACC rumors, and I've heard that Oregon and Washington have basically told the Big Ten, this is when Kevin Warren was there. So who knows what the new commission will do, but they basically said, we'll come in for less for now and kind of, pay for ourselves a little bit just to make sure that we're in a better conference. So I do think, I find it hard to believe that Oregon and Washington won't have options, but right now I'm not clear on what those options will be.
Jason, say they do get a TV deal done, and the way that all of them are going is they're shorter term. Nobody wants to get locked in to the ACC kind of thing where it's from here until forever, and they do get it done. What do they have to do as a conference during the duration of that deal to make sure that they're not just polishing the brass on the Titanic?
I'm of the opinion that even if they sign a deal, it's kind of just biding time for the next time this happens. It'll be like a 5-year deal, and we'll be doing this all over again, probably with, the Pac-12 definitely breaking up or looking different. But they got to – the way this deal is set up or is probably going to be set up is with heavy streaming. And they just got to hope that over the next, let's say, 5 years, streaming takes off and it becomes the dominant – choice for viewers. Basically, the risk that other conferences weren't willing to make pays off for the Pac-12, and that's the hope. And then maybe they add a couple more schools. Maybe they go and they extend to 14 instead of 12, and kind of get other markets there. But to me, it's the way the deal, if it does get signed, is going to line up is that it's going to be heavy streaming. And if streaming doesn't take off, like George is probably telling the presidents, the ADs, that it'll take off, the conference is going to be right back where it started, if not in worse shape, when that contract is over.
Jason, what is the alignment, if any, between what Arizona thinks and what Arizona State thinks?
I think they're relatively aligned. I don't see a scenario where one goes without the other. And I think that we're at a point where, ASU at first was very strong with the we are Pac-12, we are sticking together. I think they backed off that a little bit. I'm not saying they're willing to kind of jump, but I think they backed off and said, okay, we understand that maybe everything we were told isn't the truth, or is it going to come to fruition? So I think they have an open mind. I think basically most teams in the conference right now have an open mind, maybe not like a Washington State and Oregon State, schools like that, because they obviously want the Pac-12 to stay together. But I think the longer this goes on, the more wandering eyes you're going to see, and you're going to see schools like ASU, Arizona, Colorado, Utah kind of start to look around and say to themselves, you know what, maybe staying in this conference isn't the best scenario for us because the money just isn't there.
Would you say the Pac-12, at least outside of USC and UCLA, that for the most part everybody's pretty much where they were a week or two after USC and UCLA's decision or that story, or do you feel like it's a little more fragile?
I think it's a little more fragile. I think that you're starting the impatience within the conference is growing, and I think after USC and UCLA made the decision, there was kind of a coming together of the conference that said, we're going to get through this, and the commission said, look, I'm going to get you $40 million a school, right? And so and they were like, okay, let's get this done. Well, now it's February, there's no deal, and what the commission told you months ago, nothing has come to fruition. It hasn't. The timeline isn't there. The money isn't there. The network so far isn't there. So I think what you're seeing is it's a lot more fragile than it was. And if there's no deal a month from now, I'll say it's even more fragile a month from now than it is now. That situation is only going to get worse until the contract is done.
Was that Pac-12 statement of unison, was that something that – what did you think of that when you saw that?
It means nothing to me. I never really read into those statements. What I took from it was, there was a report in The Athletic. There was a couple other reports where, every negative report on the Pac-12 was from someone outside the conference or unnamed sources, etc. This article in The Athletic was from someone within the Pac-12, basically. And I think that freaked out, the administration in the Pac-12, in the commissioner's office, because they said, wow, okay, now it's coming from the inside. We have to be able to show strength, because even let's say reports come that the Pac-12 could break up any day or whatever, no network is going to make a bid on a conference that is ready to break up. So you kind of, in order to maximize your ability to get a bid and to maybe get the money that you think you can get, you have to show strength and that you're together, or else there's no reason for an Amazon or ESPN to even get involved if it's going to break up anyway.
All right, one more thing. Obviously, that back when USC and UCLA and that story, there was a lot of back and forth from Pac-12 fans and or media, and I hate to throw a blanket around that, and vice versa from the Big 12 as they were trying, of course, recovering from Texas, Oklahoma, which they were able to do. Do you see any increase in social media vitriol going on right now as things are kind of in this little holding pattern or whatever it might be called?
Yeah, I love it. I will say this. Big 12 fans are very passionate. They are, and they're not going to let anyone talk down in their conference. And, they come out in very strong with support of their conference. And right now it's, come, at least on my social media, it's a lot of come to the Big 12. And the Pac-12 is getting killed on social media. I mean, it just is, and it's going to be like that until a deal is signed. But there's definitely kind of a war of words where there's always going to be people that believe the Pac-12 is worth saving, and the Big 12 obviously thinks that they're a conference that probably doesn't get the respect that they deserve, and it's always fun whenever these stories come out to see the fans go back and forth.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate your time. Jason Scheer, Wildcat Authority 247 Sports, covers Arizona, of course, covers the Pac-12 too. We'll hear from Christian McCall.